Now let's go ahead and add a viewport background to our 3ds Max scene so that we have a little bit of reference to work on when we're building our bike. So you can start with this bike start file that I've got here, and it'll be located with your project files, and then just have kind of a box I've just roughly drawn in for scale, and then a box for the wheelbase that for this particular bike. So you can use that if you like, otherwise you don't need to worry too much about the scale. So I'm going to go ahead and take this, and to add a reference image here, and I'm in the left viewport, so I can just hit Alt W to toggle back and forth here, but I want to be in the left viewport. Okay, I'll hit Z to zoom extents to that, and then I'll go up to Views, go to Viewport Background, and you go to Viewport Background, and you can also hit Alt B. So I'll open this up, and I want to go ahead and match the bitmap aspect ratio, and then I'll leave that image just the way it is. And I want to also go ahead and display background and lock zoom and pan so that when I move around, that image actually stays locked to the geometry rather than to my camera. So now I'm going to go up and choose the file, and I want to choose this Monster 696 side. I'll go ahead and open that up, and I'll show you where that scene file is. If you happen to, I'm working on the C drive, if your project files, if you happen to have them located somewhere else, you may need to go in and relink the image file on some of the future project files that are going to have this already loaded. But for this instance, you'll be able to go in and load your own from wherever it is that image file happens to be. So you should be good to go unless you start with a project file that I've created along the way, in which case you may have to relink those. So now with all of that selected, I want to do it in the left viewport, active only. I want to say OK to that. Okay, and this is going to come in pretty well. It's fitting in within our scale, and the wheelbase matches up fairly well with this. Okay, so I'm going to say that that is pretty good. And so now we can use this as a rough outline to placing our geometry in here. So we know that we can where we need to place our wheels. Now keep in mind, this isn't a strictly orthographic view. If you take a look at this, it's at a little bit of an angle. So you can see the other exhaust, the other muffler over on the other side. Okay, so you really need to be careful when you're using photographic reference for image planes, because rarely will it be exactly from the side. Okay, so this is at a little bit of an angle, so we're going to have a little bit of distortion, and we're not going to be able to match it up exactly, but we can get it fairly close. But that's just something to be aware of when you're drawing out artwork. You can sort of modify it and draw it out so that it's exactly from the side, but even then you're going to have things that don't match up. So anytime you're working with reference, just be aware that there will be irregularities, because they'll become obvious when you start to build this in 3D and something doesn't match up, especially if you're using multiple image planes or viewport backgrounds, which we're not doing in this case. But if you are, some of the things aren't going to match up. And that just comes down to using your judgment and trying to get the best result by kind of creating a compromise between those. Okay, so now that we've got our viewport background, I can go up to the viewport. If I want to turn that off, I can say show background. I can turn that off or on. Okay, I can go up to viewport background, and now I'm able to update. So if I were to change the background image, I can go ahead and update that. If I change it in Photoshop or do something to it, I can go ahead and update that. And I can also go back into viewport background. If I want to take away the viewport background, I'm just going to go into devices, and I'm going to say OK. It's going to say no I/O handlers found. Say OK to that. Give me an error message. And then I'll say OK, and it'll get rid of that viewport background. Then I can go back in, re-add it. Go ahead and select that image, and I'll go ahead and re-add that back in, and then I'll save that out. So from this point, we can start to create our geometry. And the first thing that we're going to do is to create our trellis frame. So that's this piece right here, this kind of a really thick tubular frame here. And we can do this using splines. And splines are something that we're going to use a lot throughout this training, and it's something I really enjoy using in Max. It gives you a lot of flexibility when you're building a wide variety of pieces. So in this case, we're going to be using this to build our frame, but we're going to use it also to build some of the more complex shapes like the gas tank and the seat, some of the subframe, some of these pieces. Splines actually lend themselves very well to being able to create some of those pieces. So in the next lesson, we'll go ahead and come in, start using some splines to draw out our frame. All right, so we'll go ahead and do that next.